I don't often have thoughts, but when I do, I like to express them. And sometimes it doesn't go down too well. But today, I want to do that again. I've had a thought, I've been thinking about it for a while, and I want to express it. We're just going to be going off the cuff here once again, so if I yap a lot, I do apologise. It's just how I do things. But I want to talk about the upcoming 3D open world, linear, semi-open world, whatever they might be, but the 3D action combat gacha games that are on the horizon in the gacha space. We've got a lot of them, whether that's Silver Palace, Azure Familiar, Rewinding Cadence, Varsapura, Project 2/3 Utopia, Nevernis to Evernis, and probably many others that I haven't mentioned, and of course, Arknights Enfield. But I want to separate Arknights Enfield for a reason which I'm going to try and explain here. I'm a shill, I know I am, but I want to separate it because after playing it, I feel like it should be separated because it does something different enough to separate it. But what I'm talking about is the worry of homogenization through combat systems, which will then relate to combat modes, gameplay loops, and just systems in general across these games. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about rotation-based combat systems and how similar they're really starting to look across these games. Now, in the post-Genshin world, we've seen this explosion of high-quality, high-production, high-investment games in the gacha space. Genshin proved a lot of money put into a game can potentially make a lot of money. Now, that comes with a large risk, right? And when a large risk is attached to a video game, it creates caution in development, and games tend to rely on tried and tested systems. There's a reason why the AAA space became so trash over the last few years. It's not just because they want to make trash. It's because when you spend a lot of money, you want to reduce risk and you start to look at what's been successful and you think, if we can replicate that, we can make money. But we all know that that starts to get boring really, really quick. Now, since Genshin, we've had Wuthering Waves and we've had games like Zenless Zone Zero that have done it really well, but they're like the first floor, the ground floor of this post-Genshin world, so it feels great. Now, Wuthering Waves has amazing combat. Zenless has amazing combat. Slightly different in how the rotation system works because Zenless is a little bit more resource-based, where Wuthering Waves is purely rotation-based combat. Now, the reason I separated Enfield from this is because the way the game works is having all the parties or the team members on field and rotating, if you will, through your chain skills and battle skills. Although you do it a little bit differently, it separates itself enough for me that it doesn't feel too samey. And I've played the game for multiple hours, and I definitely do think that now. I think it separates itself just enough, and I think with the nuances in the kits and the way the combat works, bringing team members in and out is going to create enough team building potential and different ways to play the game that it won't be just the simple 1, 2, 3 kind of rotation, if that makes sense. I really do think Enfield separates itself. I'd love to know if you disagree down below though, but that's just my opinion. I am a shill, I know it, but I think it does enough. But anyway, I digress. Back to the games here, and you'll see on screen, right, we've got Silver Palace, right, we've got Azure Familiar, we've got Rewinding Cadence, we've got all these games, right, but let's just take a quick look at some of the combat here and see what I'm talking about, right? If you just look at like a lot of these games, right, and because of the combat as well and the way the games work, it starts to influence the UI design also, because it needs to, because you kind of need the same information conveyed because the systems are pretty much the same, so it ends up meaning the UIs look very similar and not just the gameplay itself. And then that goes into modes and sort of combat events and stuff as well, and you just start to think, man, I feel like I've been here before, and that's a big worry, right? So if you look at here, Silver Palace, we look at this gameplay. One thing I do really like about Silver Palace is that everybody's got a ranged and a melee weapon. Awesome. I'd like them to really lean into that and make that like a core element rather than rotating through characters. And we can see the parry system. We don't know the intricacies of the affliction stacking and the nuances of the character swapping in the game, all right? They're all going to have their own systems that are slightly different, but are they going to be big enough to differentiate each title? You know, we go over to Azure Familiar, right? This is a game that I was quite excited for, but after watching more and more combat, I'm a little bit less excited for now. But again, we can only see 2 characters on screen at the minute because this is a particular early part of the game. But it's a very similar thing of rotating through characters. We go to Rewinding Cadence. Similar thing once again, let me just go back here so you can actually see what I mean. You know, of playing your character, switching through to a next unit. Let me just go back a little bit earlier again, sorry. And it's you know what I mean. You look at these games, right, and we're looking at something that we've seen before, right? Now they do their own thing, and some of them look flashier than others. And again, these sorts of combat styles are not bad looking, and they're not unenjoyable to engage with. I'm not saying that. These are all, well, I haven't played most of these games, but the systems themselves, rotation-based combat, isn't unfun. It is fun, but it's just once you've done it over and over again, do we get to a point where it's like, are we seeing a major stagnation in this particular part of the gacha space? And for me, it's an important part of the gacha space, right? Because I say, this is where it's pushing the space forward, if you will, in terms of the AAA look and feel to the games. And my worry is we're going to have a lot of potentially amazing games with amazing settings, premises and stories just fall short because they're trying to replicate something that has been really successful in a couple of other games. And we've got these titles now, right? Who's to say in another year or two, I'm showing Wuthering Waves and that now as well, just to, you know, compare. Who's to say in a couple of years that we don't have 20 titles like this? And for me, it's kind of a genuine worry of a potential, I don't want to say like a crash, like a video game crash like we had back in the 80s and that. I mean specifically like a major burnout in this space, and it really stagnates the space because developers start to think, oh, maybe there isn't all this money in the production value, in the investment. Let's maybe retract and go back to making things that have less risk and a little bit more less polished, if you will. And I'm cool with that because games like CZN exist and are amazing. Uma Musume, Arknights, there's games that can be incredible without the production value, right? It doesn't mean the games are worse. It's just that I want games like this, right? I want games in this space to have this sort of visual clarity and fidelity and amazing worlds with great voice actors and incredible set pieces and stuff. But I worry potentially we'll have sort of a retraction because everybody's like, well, man, we've all tried to do the Genshin thing, if you will, the Wuthering Waves thing, if you will, and it's just not paid off. Maybe people don't want this. Maybe it's not worth the risk. I think it is, but I think the risk is what's going to be worth it for some of these games, right? In actually doing something different. Now, I don't have the answer what that is in terms of the gameplay loop, but rotation-based systems are easy to make for 3D games. And the reason they're easy to make is because it's an easy way to build synergy around characters, and synergy can then sell other characters. Incredibly efficient way to monetize the game, right? Yet people need to have the other characters to facilitate the team and get the rotation off, and then characters are built in a specific way to encourage that synergy, if you will, and then you sell characters. And again, rotation-based gameplay isn't unfun. It's a fun system. When you've done it 20 times across a bunch of different games, what are we doing then, you know? And again, I worry for the space because somebody who's a massive fan of these games and how they look and what they can bring to the table and the potential of what we can get, and being free as well. Obviously, we have the monetary system, but being free and open to all of these people around the world. I worry that it's a thing that's going to create major stagnation in the space. I want some other developers to come along, and I'm not even saying look at Enfield, right? But just try to separate themselves enough. I genuinely, now, you can call me a shit all you want. I honestly think Enfield does more than all of these titles put together to separate itself enough that it looks and personally it feels different. Now, of course, I haven't played all of these games. They might massively feel different, but we're all gamers, right? We can look at these games and we can kind of tell what the combat experience is going to feel like, right? It's not rocket science, and I know people argue we haven't played it yet, but like we can look at these things and understand that, okay, I get what's going on here. Now, some might feel better than others in terms of impact and, you know, combat finesse and smoothness and impact and all of these things, and underlying systems are going to be slightly different in all these games. But how different? How different? I think fundamentally, when your game's based around a rotation-based combat system, right? Which means you're gonna have your DPSs, your sub DPSs, your supports, all this stuff. Which I don't have issue with the archetypes, but they're gonna work in a way to facilitate a particular kind of combat. So the systems can only be so much different. Otherwise, I think it won't work, right? I think it won't work. Now, some developers might come along and prove me totally wrong. But again, when we look at the UIs in these games, there's a reason why they look so similar, because the systems are similar and fundamentally the gameplay loops are similar. And then again, as I said, I worry about the wider game and events and everything about the game, the grind, the farming, the building. It all fundamentally becomes the same thing, and I don't think that's good for the space. I want to see some innovation. I really do. And I do think, and I'm already seeing it, people are calling it rotation slot gameplay. And it's hard to disagree. Wuthering Waves isn't slot gameplay. Zenless Zone Zero is not slot gameplay. You know, Silver Palace, although I do think there's some issues with the combat, not about the rotation system itself. I mean, just it needs some work. It isn't slot gameplay. I don't think these games are slot. If you look at them in a vacuum, they're not slot. But then when you start to look at them next to each other, it's kind of hard to say, okay, all right. I don't want to call it slot, but you know, it starts to actually breathe some life into the term, if you ask me. And again, I might be worrying too much about nothing here, right? And these games might be incredible, with incredible gameplay that separates themselves enough that you're like, yep, this game's fucking sick. And this probably comes from a more of a tourist mindset as well. I play a lot of different games, right? And I like games to feel different. And I play a lot of gacha games, and I like them to feel different. And if you're just playing one game and that's your main game, another game coming out that's kind of like the DNA Warframe conversation of, hey, 2 cakes. I get that. I do get that. So that is not going to affect you. If you just play Wuthering Waves and you're like, ooh, Silver Palace looks good, you've got 2 games that like scratch that itch, right? Or I think, you know, as somebody who likes to play a bunch of different games and just want some games to stand out, I want some of these games to do something different, right? But I guess I am an Enfield shill, so in Enfield we trust. I'm happy that Enfield is doing something different enough for me personally that it gives me some satisfaction and some positivity around the game going forward. Obviously, we'll have to see what happens after launch, right? They could fuck it up. But yeah, I just want to see some of these games. Like when I look at Silver Palace, right, looks amazing. And the gameplay doesn't look terrible. I'm just like, the combat needs some work. But let's say the combat was as good as Wuthering Waves. I'd still think, you know, it would have been nice if it was a little bit different, if I'm honest. Again, I think this is why, and I know they're doing monetization differently, and this probably has allowed them to make the gameplay different, is Ananta. Now, we need to see more of that as well, because that definitely looks like it's got issues in places. But I think because that's potentially being monetized in a different way, it's allowing them to build the systems in a different way, which is allowing us to get a different experience. And I still think we can get different experiences and games be built differently with the monetization. I think it just takes a bit of extra work and thought process from these devs, right? There's games in this space that do different things and it works for them. And I think in this particular subsection of the gacha space, which is the high quality 3D action space, I think we can get something different, man. And I'm hoping and waiting for the next game that shows off a trailer and I'm like, oh, okay, this is different. I think that's all I'm asking for, right? I think I'd like to see something different. Anyway, I've yapped on for long enough, guys. I'd love to know what you think down below about the worry of the rotation slot style of gameplay going forward. Does it make you fear that all of these games are just going to feel very samey and it's going to potentially ruin otherwise potentially really good games? I don't know. Let me know what you think down below. Subscribe if you're new. Like the video if you enjoyed it. And I'll see you all in the next one, guys. Ta-da.